Hey, what's up, y'all? Classic Kev back with another episode. Y'all, honestly, it's really probably the most important episode yet because on today's episode, we have a really special guest, Frank Holmes, who's one of the co-founders of Hive Blockchain. Frank, how are you doing, my friend?
Outstanding in a bear market.
We are in the midst of the bear market, Frank. And what was the Warren Buffett quote that only when the tide fully goes out, you'll see who isn't wearing any clothes. And well, you guys posted your numbers today, your June numbers, and it looks like Hive is clearly wearing clothes in this bear market.
Well, touch wood, and God has been good to us. So we have still the most efficiency of all the miners, and we produce much more than many of these guys with market caps 3 times our size. It really befuddles me. I scratch my head and wonder why we're the only green and clean coins. There's no premium. I believe there should be a premium for that. But I do believe that I'm the older guy. Someone told me I was the Colonel Sanders of this industry because it's all filled with young guns like yourself. But I think that I have a lot of experience in high-risk asset classes, from exploration to creation of gold mining royalty companies. And I've lived through many of these bear markets. And so you have to have a different perspective. So the greater, and I'll give you for simple terms, the greater the volatility of the underlying commodity that you produce, the faster you have to get your return on capital. So if you have something that's low volatility, then you can expect a longer return because it's stable. It's more about the stability and the predictability of those returns. So what happened a couple of years ago is that when you went out and bought some Bitmain machines or whatever the companies were, Cannons, etc., they were about a 6-month payback. And you could get the machines pretty quick. And so therefore you could calculate, yes, the daily volatility of Bitcoin is plus or minus 7%, stock market's 1%. So it is 7 times more volatile, and even same number over 10 days. So I need to have a 6-month to 9-month maximum payback on my capital. What happened at the peak is that all of a sudden the pricing of the machines went up so great that it was a 2-year payback. And that happened back in 2017 at the very year end, that all of a sudden, what was a 6-month payback at the beginning of 2017, at the end was a 2-year payback. That led to a big crisis and a crash, and things unraveled. And then, like you said, Warren Buffett said, when the tide goes out, you can see who's wearing bathing suit, who's not. And so we are seeing that. And so what we are seeing just recently is that the payback's coming into 12 months. And I believe that we're going to have to, like, we're being offered Bitmain machines, brand new, landed for $35 a terahash. Only 6 months ago, they were $80 a terahash. So there is the compression, but if I want a 6-month payback based on Bitcoin at 20,000, 21,000, I need to buy these machines around $20, $25 a terahash. Mm-hmm. So we haven't hit a bottom yet in that equipment stuff. That's the way I look at it. So what we did is that we bought always in small chunks. And we never turn around and said, okay, we're going to go and buy all the production for Bitmain for a year and raise lots of money through the capital markets and lots of future promises. We basically, okay, can we buy this, build this out, add machines? And we're the only ones that actually bought other companies during the bear market, the last bear market. During COVID, we bought 30 megawatts in Quebec and then bought another 25 that now is going to 80 megawatts in New Brunswick. Beautiful buildings. They look like cathedrals in the data center business. It's a whole campus, and we're just finishing our 4th building. So we are trying to do things the way what I've learned here in South Texas with fracking. So if you're a fracker and you hit 1,000 barrels a day, a year later, it may be only 50. The decline rates are so great. So that's very volatile. To maintain and to expand your production, you must always be drilling. So in this business, it's not about buying a big one-time drill program and a big this. It's always taking the cash flow and expanding and always drilling, always being more efficient in machines. And that mindset, I think, has helped us. And my old school of being through these bear markets of, do we take on the debt, yes or no? What would be it? Now, if I could get cheap debt with a 6-month payback, I would do it all day long. Because the return on capital model, I de-risk that idea of borrowing. But it's not there. And I've seen many of my friends get blown up with, they can't fulfill their orders. They put down hundreds of millions of dollars on Bitmain machines. They don't have the resources now to do the second buy to get delivery. You're seeing other sort of dynamics. So it's a classic bear market cycle. And touch wood, our production at the beginning of this, after the halving took place a couple of years ago, was about $100,000 a day. And today, even with this big correction, we're doing close to 300,000 if you look at our production. And a little over that, actually. And our costs are 150. We stay lean. And that allows us to take that 150, 200 grand a day to buy more transformers, buy more equipment to maintain that slow and steady growth profile.
Yeah. And, me as and guys, in full disclosure, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but I do, in full disclosure, I do own the largest of all my publicly traded miners is Hive Blockchain. I also do own some Hut 8 and Riot. And when I look at their balance sheets, what I notice is it seems like their focus is on hash rate. And also too, I believe you're the only publicly traded miner that mines Ethereum, or at least that in industrial level, So I guess as an investor, what my concern was, with Ethereum switching to that proof of stake consensus, would this affect Hive? I would assume that you would still need validator nodes to validate transactions, and Hive is creating those data centers. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think I've listened to it from day one. When I launched, went in this creation of Hive as my proxy, because I couldn't launch a Bitcoin ETF. So this became like my JETS ETF and my GoAU ETF listed in New York. I couldn't, and I realized it wasn't, and it still hasn't happened yet, the creation of a cash Bitcoin ETF. And so in that journey, we looked at, first of all, was the buy Ethereum. And we bought a facility in Iceland. And that was most interesting because back in 2017, proof of stake is coming. Why would you do that? Are you crazy? And the margins are so big. And when you get Bitcoin running, it's like gold running, but when gold runs, silver runs more. And when Bitcoin runs, Ethereum runs more. So you actually have a bigger margin. If you go back 6 months ago, our margins were 92% mining Ethereum, 92. So proof of stake hasn't happened yet. There have been upgrades, and they're great. And they do sort of help streamline some of the gas fees, etc. But what you have to be careful of is the proof of stake is very risky in becoming proof of security. And I've written about this. They've become now proof of scam, POS. It's not proof of stake as they like. And all these stakers. So I had so many guys trying to hustle me to take my $100 million worth of Ethereum and give it to them, and they'll give me a yield. And I was so reluctant because I didn't have custody. I didn't have separate, they could not give me all the assurances like I would have with my mutual funds. I understand about segregated assets, etc. So I declined to do it, and I'd rather sell. And I sold a lot of my Ethereum at much, much higher prices, $3,000, $3,500. That's $2,000. I mean, it was, interesting. It was better for us we hold when everyone said, "Are you nuts?" We made 3 times what we did holding Bitcoin. Then we started a sell program. So will this come out? It was supposed to happen on June the 8th. Then it get pushed out to August. And now I don't think it's going to happen the way you think it's going to happen. I know there's a big push, but there's always these glitches. And now today, there's all the lawsuits against the ecosystem of Solana. So that is all the competition for Ethereum, proof of stake. The proof of stake really has a great risk a proof of being a security.
Mm-hmm.
So as I mentioned earlier to you, that if I put a $100 bill on the table, it doesn't earn anything. I put a $2,000 gold coin on the table, it doesn't earn anything. I put a wallet with a Bitcoin or Ethereum in it, it doesn't earn anything. Once I take those three types of asset classes and I want to start giving you a yield, I have to securitize it.
Yeah.
I have to take the $100 bill and put it in my bond fund or my dividend funds. And all of a sudden now it is regulated by the SEC.
That is correct. And I believe the SEC stated that for it to be a security, it has to be a fungible asset. Now, what protected Ethereum, I believe, from not being classified as a security is because of the smart contract capabilities and being able to program. It has utility. So I believe that's what's protected Ethereum.
Well, only to the, it's interesting history of it, because they actually went and did their crowdfunding in Zug, Switzerland. Had they went and did it in the US, they would be a security. And that's the whole lawsuit against Ripple, that Ripple was a big $1 billion pump and dump, and that Ripple was really a security filled with promises and no corporate governance, no checks and balances. So when you're in that proof of stake business, you're now running a public company. And so what are the checks and balances to make sure you're not issuing tokens to everybody? And so it lends itself for oversight. So coming back on this thought process, so when they went and they knew this on the creation of Ethereum, they went to Switzerland. And a lot of the other token foundations end up going into Switzerland because it was legal to basically raise capital by selling the token originally the way they did and not be characterized as a security.
That's interesting, and I think that, the whole, when we looking at the different blockchains and the knocks on them, one, there's obviously environmentalists that don't like the proof of work, but, I'm one from investing in y'all. I've learned so much about proof of work. It's kind of a myth that it's this not green, but you're actually revolutionizing green energy. Could you kind of tell us about that?
Yeah, you know what? It's lots of fun. I'll give you a classic. There is a lot of when Uber was trying to break into, say, New Orleans, two guys controlled all the cabs, and they had their sweetheart deal with the city hall. Same thing in San Antonio, same thing in every city. It was an oligopoly in every little city. In comes the decentralized disruptor called Uber. Uber can make all the presentations they want. They weren't getting anywhere until they funded an NGO. Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. And when a mother comes in pounding that table, then all of a sudden Uber is ushered in as being the third party to stop this. And it was really, it's an interesting model. So I was told that that Ripple funded Greenpeace with $5 million to go and all this negative news on proof of work. And that is to try to make proof of stake the better alternative and make it a green argument and an ESG argument. And it's, it's brilliant what they did, if that's true. But Greenpeace came out with change the code of Bitcoin. Well, there is so much fun because let's talk about electricity. A third of all electricity gets wasted. It can be transmitted for long distances. I can go on with a host of things. And our original strategy, and touch wood has been there, is to focus on basically surplus and stranded electricity and green electricity. So what we do in Sweden is that we can also hedge. So whenever electrical prices are low, we hedge out the year. So we've hedged out 2 cents and 3 cents electricity. It's a touchdown pass away, the hydro dam, from our facility of 30 megawatts in Boden, which is 100 miles south of the Arctic Circle. And it is a military hub. It's very busy now with all the NATO stuff going on with Ukraine. That community is just robust. And the other big part outside of military has been hockey. Hockey's all of the professional hockey, small teams everywhere. And Facebook is only 30 miles away in another university town, technology university town, Lula. And it's, it's interesting that what we're doing is that we're building and going through the plans now, and in Bowdoin, is to build a big greenhouse, and we'll become the biggest cucumber in all of the Nordic countries. And that means there'll be no carbon footprint from Spain and Italy bringing vegetables up. And we can do this 24/7, take the heat. Now we're doing this right now in Quebec. We have 40,000 square foot building, 30 megawatts, mining Bitcoin, take all those, think of 10,000 hair dryers, 1,400 watts, lots of noise, blowing all that hot air. It comes down through a cylinder and a tube, and it goes across, not too far, maybe 25 yards, into a 200,000 square foot building. It heats the other building, and that other building is the biggest pool manufacturer in Quebec. So I am recycling this energy, and so I'm paying 5 cents Canadian per kilowatt, which is a great price, and it's all green hydroelectricity, but I'm actually recycling. And that has been our whole idea. Our dream is what can we do to recycle and maximize this energy? And each year we become a little better and smarter with it. And the same thing when we're in Iceland is geothermal electricity. And we're looking in Texas with to have wind and solar. And that seems to be more problematic in getting all the equipment and building all that infrastructure out. But in Texas, what's interesting is that the big miners here actually balance the grid. So they will shut down during extreme hot days or cold days and let the surplus, otherwise there's surplus electricity that's getting wasted. Mm-hmm. And so they're using that and creating jobs and creating economic development. So it's balancing the grid. What we do in Sweden is that we get paid to be standby so that they don't have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in building turbines for hydroelectricity to expand, and we tool down. They pay us. So in the morning, when everyone turns on their toasters, we all of a sudden scale down from 30 megawatts to 1, and then an hour later we come back up. Everyone comes home at 5 o'clock. From 5 to 6 is a big demand on electricity. We tool down. So we're a standby and we can do it with software faster than turbines turning on and off. Because for them to do it quickly, they would have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure. So we become that balancing for them. And so, yes, there's lots of FUD. Greenpeace has been funded by proof of stakers. And so how do you navigate through that? I've written about this. This whole thing on using NGOs is something that Putin's done. Putin has been funding NGOs to go and have screamers in Europe about climate change. And then there's this emotional backlash by the media and the politicians. And they brought all these taxes and regulations. Now they have embedded inflation. And they have people protesting in Amsterdam, like, let's kill 1 million sheep because they fart too much. Yeah. And cows, like it hasn't been thought through. And you don't have enough engineers working out if you're going to go through this extreme climate change. America's unique. It just passed a law, the Supreme Court, that basically gave that power and went back to the states away from the EPA. Mm-hmm. So I think there's going to be competition and innovation in how they moderate climate change. But I think that Europe has really made some big errors, like Germany shutting down all the nuclear energy. And the same thing happened in Spain. Now they buy electricity from France and it's up 600%. Can you imagine your home, your bill goes from $100 a month to $600 a month? That's a lot. And so where does all this emotional stuff? Putin funds the NGOs, mm-hmm. creates the demand for his energy, and it becomes self-fulfilling. They've been doing this in Africa a long time ago for civil wars. They've been doing it in Latin America. They turn around and fund NGO. The NGO then goes into those communities and funds a union. The union then funds the politician. And all of a sudden, Peru goes left. Colombia goes left. Chile goes left. Well, where did that money, because it's illegal for citizens from abroad to come in. So there's a lot of mechanisms used through these NGOs. And we saw the movie with Matt Damon, Anti-Fracking. And the anti-fracking documentary was funded by Gazprom. It's right at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So you have to be really, I'm a global investor, I have global funds, so I'm always in touch with the sort of that noise that goes around the world. And I can see that now in the crypto industry. And I see that what we saw in 2018, that run 17, 18, is all these tokens were coming out, like the new Ethereums, et cetera. But they weren't. They were just pump and dump, and they were securities. So they all got blown up, and the head of the SEC, Clayton, did a phenomenal job chasing all those punks out of town. And then we do get these idealist, geeky kids that are coding, and they're idealists, and they're almost like a socialist mindset. And so, yes, but crypto mining is bad. Proof of stake is better, proof of work. But you have to make a gold brick, you have to have equipment like an ASIC chip, and you need electricity to separate the dirt from the gold. And so you have to have something that use electricity to create the digital asset. When you do proof of stake and you just create the coins, you just print them like stock certificates. So this debate's going to go on. But crypto mining, what we're doing is a very special, unique product. And our data centers, by putting them on our balance sheet, have gone up dramatically. When I first started buying for 350,000 a megawatt, they're trading at 2 million. So I feel good long term. I think the idea of going to the metaverse is hit a couple of road bumps now, but it'll come back on. They need these sites because the Amazons of the world are becoming very expensive. Our NVIDIA GPU chips can also go into high performance computing for artificial intelligence, et cetera. So this proof of stake allegedly coming, it's not a big bad boogeyman for me, but it's also stopped a lot of competition coming in to mine it. And it's allowed us to be the most profitable and highest gross margins in the industry.
Yeah. And Frank, I agree with everything you said. You know, these third parties that clearly have an alternative motive, because if they were being intellectually honest, you know, we can look at the data, and what the data suggests is that the traditional banking system uses far more electricity than any proof of work, whether, you know, it's Bitcoin or Ethereum. Dryers in your home use far more electricity. And then let's not even get started on Las Vegas. How much electricity? You see what I'm saying? It's really intellectually dishonest. But, you know, if what I want my audience to really gather from this is that companies like Frank's are really revolutionizing green energy, because he's bringing innovation. And then it seems that these Nordic regions are more welcoming to this infrastructure than maybe America is. And that's what I fear. I hate to see America get left behind on the crypto industry, on the mining industry specifically, because I think it's going to be so big. You know, I think it's going to be such a big part of our world.
Well, I think that there's a good point, but I think America really has become a leader. And I must say that the head of the SEC has done a great job so far trying to navigate this. And he has to get control and regulate these exchanges or hedge funds in the space and brokers, because they abuse leverage, and that's always hurts investors and hurts the industry. So I think that he's done an exceptional job. You do see it like states. Let's take a look at this. A great example. The Olympics of the world was, how did each country handle COVID? Don't worry about Summer Olympics, Winter Olympics. Every country had to participate in this COVID phenomena. And what were there? How long did they shut down the schools? How many people died? What was the median age? Why did the median age of people die as 82 years old in New York versus Florida? We'll both have old age people. Why did more die in New York than there were in Florida? And why did kids stay in school in Florida longer? So you do have a mindset of politicians. And what you do see with COVID is the more left they were and the more centralized their view of the world, the longer the lockdowns were, and the greater they are anti-crypto mining. So you see the state of Texas open up its arms and say, come in and balance our grid, please come in, create jobs, do all of this. And use the opposite, it would be in New York State, doing everything to shut it down, even though they have old aluminum factories shut down with surplus hydroelectricity. It doesn't matter. It's just a mindset. So you see this in Europe too. So we have to be really cautious in how we navigate in all these provinces in Canada. The same thing in the Nordic countries. We went into Norway at the beginning of 2017, and they did a whipsaw. They went all anti-crypto mining. We took a big write down, and then they opened up the door again. Now they're supposedly having difficulties. So I scratched my head on, do they all buy in? What I can share with you is the more competitive and innovative the states' governments are in a mindset that come to Florida, come to Texas, and seeing that California is chasing all the entrepreneurs to the state of Texas. He's now running ads anti-Florida, the governor.
I see that.
So you can see there's a mindset. But I would say in the context of the world, the US is by far one of the strongest mindsets. Go to Latin America, it's going to be Paraguay. It's interesting how fast they have a surplus electricity, they have hydro, and they want to create that there's money coming in for that surplus. And I think that we're going to see that grow. And I think we need data centers, and we're going to need more and more as the world becomes more digitized. And so long term, Hive is building data center assets on its balance sheet.
Yeah. And, I think you are right about that. The more competitive we see the states, the more, kind of like what you saw with marijuana, now you see in other states legalize that based on, tax revenue and how successful it was in states like California and Colorado. But, what I stress, and I talk to my local political leaders, saying it is a disconnect, because I'm trying to explain to them what this technology can do, and that we need to incentivize mining companies to come to Louisiana, because, where I live, there's a lot of oil refineries. So obviously a ton of pollution. And I'm just like, it's so frustrating, because this, incentivizing miners to come here could create so many jobs. I mean, you'll need operators for these, and these kids can learn to program Solidity. They can learn, to build these mining farms. There's so much opportunity there. So it does make me feel good that you feel that we are ahead compared to some of the other countries.
We're the best. I love this country. I was just in France at for my luxury funds product, and with CEOs, and it was so interesting to get a tour guide and a history guy, and he's telling me about how great France is, and America's like that. He's telling me, and I'm scratching my head. And he said, "Well, we have free healthcare," and I said, "Yeah, and everyone's smoking on cigarettes. We're worried about climate change. So what's going to kill them first, climate change or smoking?" And then he went on about education is free. And I commented, did you know that education is free? But more people go to university in America than they do in France. More people go to university in America than they do in Spain. And if you give me any CEOs around the world that are like a YPO organization, which I'm a member of, and they're in Dubai, et cetera, they all have the kids that come to American schools. So, this is the greatest nation in the world, because we have politics is a sporting event. The state political power, we're seeing decentralization. Brexit was about decentralization from the EU. There's a theme going on here. It's emotional over abortion, pro-life, it's very emotional. And it's very difficult to get, but I think what we step back and see is that they want to separate it. It's not a federal mandate. It should be by state. And if the state voters want it, they can have it. And now we're seeing for environmental issues. So we're seeing a pushback against big centrally controlled entities like the Beltway Party in Washington. We're seeing that anti-Putin, because Putin's a centralist. Putin's trying to take over the Ukraine, expand his footprint, and there's a rebellion against that. So I think, I don't know whenever the time is, but you're probably going to see, the EU get split up into other nations. So almost happened when Greece was going bankrupt. Italy, Spain, and Greece should all be put together as one entity, and France and Germany and Amsterdam, and they should be another entity. And so I think it's, to me, a fascinating journey that, and someone was explaining to me in a biblical, is the story of Babylon, the Tower of Babel.
Mm-hmm.
And the Tower of Babel is a metaphor that if the people all trying to go one way up to heaven with this tower, the only way to stop is they all get different languages. We have to stop this. So it's a metaphor that it's good to go centralized to a certain degree, and then it becomes problematic.
Yes.
The Catholic Church became so powerful globally around the world, and then all of a sudden comes the printing press. 100 years later comes the Lutheran movement, and all of a sudden you see them. The Anglican Church is formed in England. The Baptist United grow out of this sort of Lutheran movement because people are more educated, and so you saw this taking away the power of the centralized Roman Catholic Church. And so the centralization works to a certain degree, and then it starts to become a dinosaur, and we have to go to decentralization. And I think that that's what Bitcoin is about.
Yeah.
It's about having this alternative, because it was cash in your pocket only, not cash in the bank, was your portable liquid asset. Gold, diamonds, for all the Jews that had to run from country to country from ghettos, got chased away. It was portable wealth, gold, silver, diamonds. And you still to this day, those who were first to get to Syria had gold. Vietnamese boat people first to go had gold. They paid with gold. So gold is that sort of incredible decentralized portable asset. And there's been nothing new. In '82, they shut down bonds where you could have them, that they could be portable assets. They took away that right. And so now it's only Bitcoin. So I think it's healthy. I've advocated that still 10% for diversified portfolios in gold, and 2 to 3% in Bitcoin, Ethereum. And if you don't want to go open an account, then you can buy a stock like Hive, and it'll be a proxy, because we move day in by the hour now with Bitcoin. And I believe there's a quant basket that trades them all together, and some a little bit more than others, but basically it's probably 70% of the volume is a basket of all of us.
Yeah, that the block ETF, I believe, has a large exposure to Hive. I have that in my Roth IRA, and no, I like a lot of what you said. And with these geopolitical issues we're dealing with, whether Russia, Ukraine, and I think that's what's in the backdrop that a lot of people aren't talking about is the moving away from the petrodollar. And what I'm like, it just seems like the elephant in the room is, when are one of these countries going to trade in exchange in Bitcoin? Like, when is that going to happen?
I don't know. I think it's going to become part of central banks having digital assets and having gold. And I have a big believer that central banks that own gold are just smarter, because you just never know what's going to happen. When Hitler was a socialist, people don't realize that the socialists become dictators. Chavez, a communist socialist. Oh yeah,
well, that's Nazi. It's the National Socialist Party. That's what the Nazis are. Yep.
And so they don't like gold, except for when he wanted to go and no one take his Deutschmark. So basically, he went and started invading to get the gold from France. And fortunately, Churchill was smart enough early enough and got all of his gold to Canada. And then the U.S. Was taking gold across the border from Canada to build ships for him, and tanks and artillery. So it's interesting. If you love your country, when real difficulties happen, you got to have that gold. Is an interesting mindset. Next is going to be, I think, is going to be something like some Bitcoin as a digital asset. What we saw, Japan invaded China for the gold. And it's interesting in history how they need gold to get oil to run their machinery. So will they go and invade for lithium and lithium batteries to run electrical vehicles, or are they going to start going after any source of electrical systems? So there's a great debate and discussion on going away from the petrodollar to the electrical dollar. And the country that can turn around and be the most innovative and with creation of electricity from solar panels, renewables, and will have a greater economic value globally. So I think it's a really interesting trend, but this whole idea of BRIC today, trying to create something to fight the US dollar's dominance, I think that's just going to be temporary, because we did see what Putin did. You know, the Russians sold all their gold. As soon as Putin came to power, he started buying all their gold.
Yeah.
Why? Because he knew if he starts invading other countries, his currency is going to become nothing, and he's going to only be able to have gold. So he was able to trick the world to shut down their nuclear, Europeans to shut down their nuclear power, frackers to stop, can't sell LNG to the US, all the anti-exports of energy from America, that gets pushed back. And we're now exporting natural gas. And you know what happens when we have a little fire down in between our states in Texas and New Orleans, and you can't export LNG, energy prices in Europe went up 60%. So we have to be able to export, and we have to have our innovation. And so this is no doubt the country that's just so robust in innovation and deep in wealth and broad in wealth. So you know, I'm so proud to be, I'm an American, I say I'm a Tex-Can, originally from Canada, and y'all come back,
No, you know, Frank, you're right. And, you know, with what Bitcoin is able to represent is the first time in history that we're able to actually store, whether it's computing power, data, electricity, and transfer it. So, you know, the ability, you know, I don't know how to calculate how much one Bitcoin, the amount of electricity, but we weren't able to transfer an asset like that before. You know, it's portable gold. It's portable gold.
It is portable gold. And I think the other really interesting phenomenon for me in this journey of exploring and finding about it, trying to keep my brain as young as possible, like you, and it was the SHA-256 algorithm that's on my Apple phone for facial recognition. It's the backbone of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Okay, who invented it? You know who invented it?
No. Who invented the SHA? Yeah, well, okay, yeah.
America invented the SHA-256. Who invented it in America?
Who's that?
The military. It's DARPA. It's the NSA and DARPA, who are part of the Defense Department, who also invested and created drones, who created robotics for surgery, who
GPS too.
So the 256, that's why China blew it all out. Oh, it's because it's a Ponzi scheme. Recently, I had a read, you know, in a Fortune magazine, I think, article. I said, that's just FUD. You know, they got rid of it because it's US military. That algorithm for facial recognition is so special and brilliant. And it lends itself to all of a sudden moving money. Who created the sort of the concept of here's the algorithm over here in a box was telecommunications in 91. They created to move money, and blockchain, that is. The blockchain was not really commercially viable. The telecom company, I always like to use an example. Banks don't move money. If you all think actually telecom companies move the money, banks use telecom equipment. And a telecom was trying to find a way to put an algorithm around and an encryption of sending money between two parties, and it was totally transparent, but no one knew the buyer and seller. And it stayed dormant until I think the big goal was in 97 that was created, but really Bitcoin, that concept in 2000, coming out in 2009, was just a brilliant idea that started actually in 91.
So do you think it was, you know, with us not knowing who Satoshi is, do you think it was DARPA or, you know, some 3-letter agency that actually created Bitcoin? Is that what you think?
I don't know. No, I think it's probably a human being that's smart enough to be a Satoshi, so no one chases you down. But that person was probably a brilliant lawyer at the same time as a historian and a coder, someone that could put that all together, that knew this technology and knew what it could do, but it lay dormant.
Mm-hmm.
And knew how to incentivize the public. That is, in the first 4 years, you get 50 Bitcoin, and then it halves again, then halves again. And as the ecosystem builds out, then you get more support. I get this argument, by the way, often on how with older people, and I try to explain that the adoption of Bitcoin is like the adoption of diamonds.
Mm-hmm.
3% of Americans after World War II believed this intangible called love was only validated with a diamond. It's tangible, intangible. And all of a sudden, the emotions are being validated. Diamonds go from $10 a carat to $100 a carat to $1,000 a carat to 10,000 a carat. Then there's S1, S2, S3, until the Russians start blowing out diamonds. So De Beers had this incredible run that 3% of Americans go to 80% are getting married with a diamond.
This is a good point.
So if you limit the supply and enough people believe, then the value of that goes up. If enough people believe the US dollar is the best currency in the world, then it is used as the best currency in the world. It's just interesting. And then you have Metcalfe's law that says it grows exponentially. So De Beers does this again in 65 in Japan. Japan, only 3% of the women were getting engaged with diamonds. Now it's 80%.
I didn't know that.
So you can take something that's tangible and turn around with a wallet, encrypted here is this Bitcoin, and over here it's a store of wealth, and you can take this concept and it can be put together. So it has been done in diamond world, and so that's where I think the Warren Buffetts are wrong in calling it a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, and I think what Warren Buffett, there's a lot of other big, named economists and Peter Schiff being one that are extremely against crypto. And I think what they're not realizing is Frank, when you look at your balance sheet, look at the amount of infrastructure, look at the amount of equipment of, building facilities. Like that is the tangible asset that's attached to Bitcoin. That's what I think people have a hard time grasping. But Frank, really what's been on my mind is, what my concerns are for the industry, and something I definitely want your thoughts on, these central bank digital currencies, because you talked a lot about the government and decentralization. And do you feel that these CBDCs are a threat to the industry?
Well, I think that the government's slowly going to discover, but one of the disappointing things I read today was that the government in their policies, that no one could be in the room if they bought a Bitcoin.
I saw that.
And the CIA, interesting enough, is they have this whole sort of concept of there's two forms of knowledge, and there's an explicit knowledge, like getting your driver's license,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a tacit knowledge of learning how to drive.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go and be very good at writing tests, but it doesn't mean you're a good driver. You have to open the bank account. You've had to trade it. You've had to read about it. You have to understand that whole ecosystem. When Robinhood was taking off, I had all my employees, I have 25 in my fund business, and everyone opened a Robinhood account, and they all got funded to own some our funds and Hive. And more important was for them to and grow was to embrace how Robinhood was changing capital, the formation of capital. If they didn't open the account and I didn't give them a bonus to go buy those securities for them, 90% wouldn't have done it. So now they've done it, and they have that tacit knowledge. They've driven the car.
Mm-hmm.
They have all this explicit knowledge of securities laws and Series 7, 60, and 360, all the numbers you can think of, but they really don't understand buying and selling and all the issues that go with it, the emotions that go with it. And so I think that the government agencies have to actually ask people, please, if you had a Bitcoin account, Ethereum account, we need to be part of our policies and regulations, because they're going to have much more insight than someone that's just a voyeur or armchair quarterback over here. But America will do the right thing. There'll be guys like you who are educating. We have our opinions on it, and it's greatly it's greater respected. Different than in Canada, which has become much more socialist. That during COVID, the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took away the rights of assembly. People don't realize this in America. He took away the rights to assembly, and then it was that national media is not allowed to cover a protest unless he blesses it, unless the government blesses it. And people got fed up with the truck. The truck strikers strike was all about freedom of rights, freedom of the press, freedom of my individual rights. And he was going to bring in the military to shoot at people. It just goes to show that mindset. And I think that the bombardment that took place, it was healthy, but he still didn't give back people. It gets so easy into that truck strike is give them back the right to protest. They've all gone away. They protested because they couldn't protest.
You know,
we protest. All right, we're leaving. And so I think that we're seeing this, and the same thing in Europe. It's really not a mainstream talking to Europeans. And when I was over there, of all the strikes that are taking place. So it's people on social media and the TikToks of the world they're showing you what's going on, as CNN's not really covering it because they're not supposed to cover it.
The revolution will not be televised. And, I followed, the Canadian trucker thing very closely. And, what was refreshing to me was that, unfortunately, the community, the truckers had to learn this way, but a lot of them adopted Bitcoin and crypto, because of the tyrannical measures that Trudeau was imposing. But that's what blew my mind was that, it was somebody from Space Force, the literal Space Force, and he was on Anthony Pompliano's podcast, and the government paid him to basically go study crypto, Bitcoin, figure out what it is. And what he concluded was Bitcoin is a weapon. And a weapon doesn't always need to be an offensive thing. That, this weapon is sovereignty. It's personal sovereignty in your bank. That, the money cannot be politicized, because by default, money is politicized. Money, whether it's Canada or America, the systems that be control the money. And they will always use that, whether it's sanctions on Russia or Ukraine, or no matter what, money is politicized. And I think that as a society, what we need to embrace is that money and banking should never be politicized. These should be decentralized entities.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Very articulate. I couldn't do it that well. But we're living in sort of this interesting world. Digital assets aren't going away. The Paul Revere's, I like to call them, that sent money to crowdfunding in Canada immediately with Bitcoin, spending $500, $200 on setting stuff. And to see what took place in Ukraine. You can send gold to Ukraine. So there is sort of an interesting phenomenon that I've witnessed on this from the gold bug ecosystem, and many more women and many more libertarian women that are in the ecosystem, moms, lawyers, professionals that are in this, that are not in, say, the tech sector that would normally be. They're not in the whole stratus. There may not be that many coders, but still they're very big as influencers and reporters covering the industry. There are so many women. So I really think that this ecosystem is very broad and deep globally.
Yeah. And, in circling back to what Hive's doing, Frank, is obviously y'all an industrial Ethereum miner. And I think what I want my audience to really think about is that whenever you talk about metaverse, NFTs, all this stuff, this is all built on Ethereum. So, I'm a big investor in the metaverse, Frank. And I think the metaverse is going like we don't even know like what the metaverse is going to be yet. But the fact that it's built, most of the metaverse is built on Ethereum, and the fact that, Hive is the industrial miner of it. So that's kind of where I came to my investment thesis into, so it just makes sense. It just makes sense.
Great. So good. And it's been lovely chatting with you. Stay tuned. I know I'm a little disappointed in the audit process. Anything that's crypto, you were getting more challenges getting the audits done. It's just they make up, oh, crypto's gone down. You want to write everything down. But we'll get the financials out, and I think the public will be pleased that we make money. That's the nice part. and we reinvest. We have a very strong ESG strategy, what we do. So I'm thrilled about it. And I have a core of 20 people that are doing, now it's cut back where Bitcoin Ethereum is, but we were doing $12 million of revenue per employee. That's like a royalty company. So so that's quite significant compared to, say, Goldman Sachs. And I think we're going to continue what we're seeing. We're just in Spain and sold out crypto conference. I was at Consensus, 15,000 people, sold out, $1,000 a ticket, $15 million gate. The Miami conference earlier this year, even after crypto fell dramatically, fell 70%, you have sold out events and there's still $1,000 people are paying at the gate. So there is something big happening, and it's just not going away. But this cleansing is going to get rid of all the riffraff, like it did in the last one, all the token flips and flops. And now we're going to, cleanse all these highly leveraged lenders and get rid of them and get back to building a real sustainable business model.
And look, Frank, I'll be here for it. And thank you again for coming on my show, man. I really appreciate it. Frank, is there anything else you want to leave my audience with?
Just stay positive. It's so important. MIT did a study on this, that how you wake up in the morning, you have to be grateful. The fact that A, you woke up, B, someone loves you, and you love something, someone. And it can be intangible, but you have to wake up being grateful, and being thankful. It makes you thoughtful, and then you can see opportunities. You can't see opportunities if you wake up with negative expectations and negative intentions. So I share with all your listeners, etc. Be just grateful, and they're listening to you and your stories, etc. Just be grateful.
Yeah, your self-talk is everything. Well, look, y'all, thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far in the video, I'm going to leave all of Frank and Hive socials and all more information in the description of this video. And I'm Classic Kev. This is Frank Holmes. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, my friend.